Okay, we're live. Do my little sound check, my video check. It looks like everything's okay. It is Saturday, October 2nd of 2021. I remember very clearly how we started this year, at least. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, but this year I remember talking vividly actually about it was about to be 2021 and talking about goals and visions and dreams for what this year is going to look like for yourself and your family, your recovery, your healing. And now we're in the last 3 months. Like there's less than 100 days left of 2021. So that went by quick. Good morning, Jim. Thank you for always being number one supporter. But we're in the fourth quarter of this year. And it's gone by quickly, huh? It's gone by quickly. But we are here, and I'm ready to do another family education and support group for you. I know there's a lot of family members that watch this, but there is also a lot of individuals that may be in their own recovery and healing journey. And whoever you are, wherever you are, however you are, you're welcome here. Very grateful to have this opportunity and this platform to do this on a weekly basis with you all. And you can kind of count on me to always do this. You know, it's unless something comes up with my health or some schedule conflict, which rarely ever happens. This is my priority every Saturday. And a quick introduction for myself, in case anybody is watching this for the first time or will watch this for the first time later on. So my name is Param. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy with an emphasis in child development. I am a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. I also am in the world of personal recovery. I've been clean and sober since June 13th of 2008. And I also coach high school basketball. So those are that's me in a nutshell. Today is going to be a good talk. It's a little bit on the heavy side of things, but it will be a way that will hopefully provoke a little bit of thought and hopefully help you see a little bit more clearly of what it is you're looking at when you look at someone who's experiencing addictions. Because there's a wonderful quote that I love, and it says, "The eyes can't see what the mind doesn't know." And there is nothing like addiction and the odd behaviors that the human being struggling with addiction does and goes through that doesn't make sense to someone that's not in that world, right? So remember, the eyes can't see what the mind doesn't know. And my goal is to be able to explain and express and provide some information to help your mind know a little bit more. So when you see something, you're able to see it a little bit more clearly, okay? There is no secret, and it's not hidden, that those who struggle with addictions or addictive behaviors are often, always, in a lot of psychological and emotional pain, right? The reason why they seek out the substance is because it is a solution to that pain. It numbs them out. It's something that they find that helps them cope. They're using an external thing to help cope with an internal dilemma, okay? And we can all identify and relate with that. But the roots of psychological and emotional pain, where does it come from? Where do the roots come from in human beings? And I'll tell you this, that we are all addicted to something that takes away the pain, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that some of these addictions can be bad, because what is the definition of an addiction? It is the continued use of a drink or a drug or a substance despite of negative consequences. So if you remove the negative consequence and you engage in a behavior, a healthy coping skill, right? Helping out other people, connecting to others, exercising, having a really good self-care routine. These can also be something we do on a regular basis. And not only do they not create negative consequences, they create positive consequences in our lives, right? So we're all addicted to something that takes the pain away. So this one, in the past, I've done this in a different version, and I titled it Understanding Addictions. Understanding Addiction. So if you've seen that talk before, some of it's going to be similar, but as you know, I evolve as a human being. I evolve as a clinician. I evolve as someone that's always seeking to improve. So when I present something, it comes off differently. So when you want to understand addictions, I'll tell you this straight up. It is impossible to understand addictions without first finding out what it is the addict finds or hopes to find from the drink, the drug, or the addictive behavior. Okay, you have to find that out. What it is that they're getting out of this. What relief are they getting? How is it soothing them? How is it helping them? And without finding that out, you can't get it. And, just knowledge alone, by the way, so many of you family members have gone to the internet and you've searched it so deep and so broad. And you've tried so hard. You've gotten so specific, not broad, specific with a broad concept to learn as much as you can about addictions just to help your loved one out. But knowledge doesn't really create understanding. And the best example that I have for you is this, is if I give you a very complex calculus problem, and that's not what you do for a living. So you're not a math person, you're not a science person, you're not an engineer, and it's just calculus is not your world. I'm one of them. If I give you a really complex calculus problem and I say, solve it, you're going to look at me and say, you're out of your mind. I have no idea how to do this. And I say, okay, well, here is the answer to that calculus problem. Do you understand it now? And you're going to say no. Because learning the answer to a problem you don't know doesn't make you understand it. So you can go search Google all you want about addictions and get all the answers you want about addictions, when in reality, it's not going to help you understand why your loved one continued to do something despite of all the negative consequences. Why do they go back to it? Why do they go back to the drink, the drug, or the addictive behavior? Because it is impossible to understand it without finding out what it is your loved one's getting from it. Like the payoff that they get is worth the cost to them. Cost payoff analysis 101. The only reason we do anything is because what we get out of it is worth it to us. So hopefully that helped you kind of get the basic understanding of what we're going to talk about right now. And I do believe this to my core, that people who use addictive substances or addictive behaviors that have negative consequences, it is 100% a result of emotions, thoughts, discomfort, pain, and those are just solutions to them. Okay. And I'm going to give you my best kind of psychoeducation on understanding addictions right now. Okay. This is not something you just go Google on the internet and find. This is something that's hopefully you can personalize it a lot. So all human beings, right? We have these things called human needs. Human needs is just like basic needs that we have. We know what they are, right? We have food, we have water, we have shelter, we have all that kind of stuff. Now, what's up, Julian? And if anyone's over there where Julian's at, what's up? This is a hybrid of one of the conversations I gave, a week ago. So bear with me on it if you've heard a few of the things. All human beings have basic needs. Two of the most basic needs that we have that create the roots of psychological and emotional pain are the following. Okay. The first need we have is this need for attachment. Human beings need to attach to something in order to understand their place in this world, in order to grow up, to evolve. We can't do it on our own. When we're born, our primary attachments are often our primary caregivers, whether it's mom, dad, both, whether it's grandparents, whether it's adopted family, whether it's a step family, whether it's a non-traditional household, right? Whatever that is, we have these needs for attachment. And just on a side note, humans are actually one of the only species, animals, whatever you want to call us, that when we are born full term at 9 months, we are still born premature. Now, in medical world, they say like a 7-month-old baby is a premature. But in the biological world, not the medical world, even at 9 months, we are premature. Because have you seen an infant? I know Julian just had a little infant, a little baby. That little infant cannot survive on its own. That little baby is premature. It can't even hold its neck up. It can't even sit down, let alone walk. completely premature. The reason why we're born at 9 months is because if the baby gets any larger inside the womb of the mother would not be able to have childbirth. The width of the hips is too small for the size of a full baby. So we actually come out premature. So that's why attachment is so important to us in the beginning. Without attachment, we do not survive. Later on, our attachments change to things like social groups, our peers. For those of you who have adolescents and like have 11, 12, 13-year-olds, their friends become their world. They want you to drop them off at the movies and not be anywhere seen because you embarrass them. Their friends become their everything. They can talk all the time to their friends. They are highly attached to them. When their friends say something negative about them, it rocks their world. Later on, it becomes significant relationships, boyfriends, girlfriends, a lot of finding love for the first time. We get attached to those things. It becomes our hobbies, our recreations. Attachment can become things like work, school, college, careers, professional identities, becoming a husband, becoming a wife, becoming a spouse. We attach to different things throughout our entire life. It is a need. We need to be attached just like we need to drink water. We need to be attached just like we need food. Now, the second need that we're going to talk about here, and this is something that your loved ones all struggle with. If you're watching this and your loved one is struggling with addictions, this is where they struggle, is the need to be authentic, is the need to be able to express how you feel, express your thoughts, to be who you are, be who you want to be, to do what you want to do, to be able to be who you are in your own skin, right? Just authentic. And here's the kicker to all this stuff. The need for attachment is greater than the need for authenticity. So when a child, a human being going through this world is feeling something, is going through some emotions, is feeling overwhelmed, and someone asks them, how are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm okay. In that moment, they're not authentic because they're withholding, they're suppressing how they're doing. Because if they tell this other person how they're doing, is it going to overwhelm them? Is it going to be a burden on them? Is it going to break their attachment? If the answer is yes, they don't say anything. Let's say you're a child that comes up in a dysfunctional home, and children make mistakes. Children screw up in life. That's a part of the growing up process. Let's say you made a mistake and you come home and you got dysfunction in the home. Mom or dad's always angry or pissed off. If I tell mom or dad what I did, am I going to lose my attachment to them? Are they going to cut my attachment? If the answer is yes, what does that child do with what he or she did? They suppress it and don't say anything because they don't want to see the reaction from mom or dad. So they suppress authenticity with the hope of holding on to attachment. This continues on in life, my friends. It's not just a childhood thing. If you're in school and didn't do your homework because you stayed up and played video games or because you just didn't want to, you were a child and you just didn't want to do your homework, and the next day you go to school and the teacher asks you, hey, where's your homework? If I tell the teacher the truth that I didn't do it, I didn't want to, I was lazy, is the teacher going to cut my attachment? If the answer is yes, the child lies. The dog ate my homework. The child lies. Someone in my family got sick. The child lies. My computer broke. Whatever it is, because we lie, we suppress to not lose attachments. Later on in life, you might be in a significant relationship with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, you're dating. And for one night, you had a bad error in judgment and you were unfaithful to that person, right? And you go down and you talk. If your spouse asks you, hey, what did you do last night? And you say, well, if I tell the truth, they're going to cut my attachment. So what I do is I suppress authenticity because I want to hold on to that. Oh, I was just hanging out with my parents. Later on in life, this could be a work type situation. You've had a couple warnings at work because of your work performance. And one more time you're late, you sleep in and the boss asks you, hey, where were you? Well, if I tell him I just slept in late, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my attachment? If the answer is yes, oh, you know what happened last night? My grandmother got really sick and she's in the hospital. I don't know what's going to happen. Or my grandmother passed away. You know, that excuse of the grandmother passing away, for the people that use it, their grandma passes away 10 times in their lifetime because they just can't be authentic with the truth of, hey, I'm just lazy. I didn't show up. I didn't want to be here. I slept in. I don't have discipline. Suppress authenticity to hold on to attachments. So by doing what I just shared about, eventually, when you keep suppressing your true self, if you keep suppressing your authenticity, if you keep suppressing who you are, eventually you start to get disconnected from your true self. Disconnected from your true self. When you are disconnected from yourself, you start to experience physical and emotional and psychological pain. Anybody that's disconnected from themselves experiences all of those things. Have you ever looked in a mirror and you didn't recognize the reflection looking back at you? Have you looked in the mirror and said, wow, like what's going on with me? You stare at your eyes and you're like, where am I? No one's home. Psychological, physical, emotional pain leads to disconnection leads to all that stuff. So when you suppress authenticity, you get disconnected from yourself, and it creates this thing that in a lot of recovery worlds, they call the hole in the soul. You got this gaping hole in your soul. And now what do people do with that? One of the outcomes, one of the solutions to that happens to be drugs and alcohol, but not always. Remember, we're all addicted to something that takes away the pain. So it creates pain. Now, I'm going to give you a little understanding of how people cope with pain. I said one of the outcomes is drugs and alcohol. So you look at all of the drugs of abuse that your loved ones use. Okay, if we're just talking about drugs first, you look at all the drugs of abuse that your loved ones use. So we're talking about alcohol, we're talking about marijuana, we're talking about cocaine or stimulants, we're talking about opiates, pain medication, pills, fentanyl, heroin, all that kind of stuff. All of these drugs of abuse are painkillers. All of them are painkillers. Alcohol, the king of all drugs. Some people say, well, as long as my kid's not doing drugs, if they drink, it's okay. Alcohol is ethanol, is a poison. So I'm never going to stand here as a healthcare professional and say, yeah, it's safe to consume poison. I don't care. It does harm. Poison will do harm in the human body. So when alcohol goes through the blood-brain barrier and it goes to the blood, goes to the kidneys, and it starts, to the heart and starts pumping blood through your system, it goes, I call it the equal opportunity destroyer. It kills all of the organs of the human being equally. The hair, the skin, the nails, all the tissues, the liver, the kidney, the brain, all of it. And it just happens to be socially accepted. It happens to be encouraged for gatherings and parties and events. And it's a painkiller. You watch those movies that something happens to a soldier and they grab the alcohol and they pour it on the limb because it takes the pain away. And they take swigs when they're in pain and all that kind of stuff. It's a painkiller. Marijuana, painkiller. A lot of the kind of different holistic modalities. They'll recommend somebody to eat some edibles or take some THC or smoke some weed because it helps them with back pain, chronic pain, arthritis, all that kind of stuff like that. Some doctors, when there's cancer patients, even say, hey, take some marijuana that helps you with your pain management. It's not classified as a painkiller. It's actually classified as a hallucinogenic. That's why some people who have illnesses like bipolar, mental illnesses like bipolar, when they use marijuana, it can trigger psychotic events and psychotic features, which of some, by the way, people don't return from. Marijuana is not as subtle as some people think it is, especially with the high THC contents out there right now. Cocaine, some people, you're like, yeah, I remember doing some cocaine or seeing cocaine. It was always like in the party life of the discos and this and that. Cocaine is a painkiller. Anything that ends with AINE, like Novocaine, lidocaine, all that kind of stuff, painkillers. They use it in dentistry to numb out the mouth. Cocaine, if you actually, for those of you who've never used it, if you actually grab some cocaine and put it on your gums, it completely goes numb. So cocaine's a painkiller. And the last one I'll talk about here, the opiates. We've all been prescribed opiates, from the Vicodins and the Norcos and the Percocets and the Dilaudids and all that kind of stuff. It's used in medicine for pain, moderate to severe pain, codeines. And heroin and fentanyl, by the way, are just illicit versions of, I mean, fentanyl could be prescribed too, but they're illicit versions of those, the ones that are used before people come to treatment. And we all know those are painkillers, right? So let me just clarify this before I say it. Drugs on their own are not addicting, because I know that's a very, very, very loaded statement to say, because you're like, what do you mean drugs aren't addicting? There's this really world-known kind of famous person that was speaking to a lot of executives and CEOs somewhere, and he asked the crowd, how many of you have ever used Vicodin or Norco for pain? And these are all CEOs in the crowd. These are like high-end CEOs, like people that are responsible for thousands and tens and thousands of people. How many of you have used illicit drugs, not illicit, like Norco, Percocet, Vicodin, because you had a surgery, hip replacement, knee replacement, dental work, that kind of stuff, broken bones? All the CEOs' hands go up, right? Then the follow-up question is, how many of you became physically dependent on those drugs? Like 95% of the hands went down, a few stayed up. See, my friends, if the drugs were addicting on their own, right? Addicting on their own, all those hands would have stayed up. The reason why they weren't is because the drugs are just inanimate objects. Alcohol is just an inanimate object. But put in the person that has physical and emotional pain, untreated physical and emotional pain, it becomes a solution to them. They become addicted to the payoff from that drink or the drug. They become addicted to it. So let me tell you guys what happens here. The brain cannot distinguish between real or perceived pain. So when someone is in psychological and emotional pain as a result of their childhood, as a result of their mom, as a result of their dad, as a result of some psychological, physical, sexual abuse they experience, as a result of a dysfunctional home, as a result of many, many, many different things that cause physical and emotional pain, because they couldn't be authentic. They have to suppress. You know how many of your loved ones that come through programs like ours say, yeah, I just don't want to tell anybody what I'm going through, is because I don't want to be a burden on them. Do you think that's a thought that they just created like as an adult? No. At some point in their life, they were overwhelmed. At some point in their life, when they were a child, they were overwhelmed with emotions, and they wanted to tell somebody how they feel, but their attachments were also overwhelmed. Their attachments were also stressed out. So you know what that person does? They don't want to add their stuff to them because they're afraid it's going to break their attachment. So they suppress authenticity, and they never want to be a burden to anybody. That creates emotional pain later on down the line. So the human brain cannot distinguish between real or perceived pain. If I'm going through life in pain as a result of my childhood, the brain reacts and responds the same way as if I have a broken limb, a broken hand, a broken wrist, if I'm in physical pain. How do they know this? They've taken a person that has like a broken wrist, and they put them underneath a machine called a SPECT device, and the machine looks at their brain activity. And they put another person who just maybe lost someone they love, or is going through a breakup, or is in some serious emotional pain, dysregulated emotional pain, and they put that person underneath the brain SPECT device, and their brain lights up the same way. Physical pain, emotional pain, the brain doesn't know the difference. So a lot of people who have emotional pain going through life, it's if they're walking around wounded with broken limbs. So here comes, enter painkillers, drugs of abuse. See, you ever wonder why somebody reacts a certain way to alcohol and somebody else doesn't? Somebody drinks and they're okay, and somebody drinks and they're thirsty and they want some more. It's not just because that's by random or by choice, right? And by the way, this isn't just my opinion. Me and people like Jim have sat down with numerous thousands of people, and we sit there and you go look at their history, and they say, hey, when I drank the alcohol, it was just like magic. When I took the opiates, it was just like love. When I smoked the weed, it calmed my brain down, right? When I did the cocaine, it took my depression away. Whatever it is that they say, these are people that are in pain and they found a solution for it. And they continue to use that because they like the payoff. So, yeah, it's a warm hug, Jim. Opiates, for those of you guys that don't know, when they talk about heroin, a lot of people explain heroin this way. It is like the warmest hug that I've always wanted, but never got. So if you wonder why somebody does that, why somebody goes and uses heroin, is because this person was in so much emotional pain of whether it's didn't get the love that they needed throughout life, that when they use the opiates, alcohol, by the way, does have some opiate-like effects, but opiates is much more extreme, especially if they're IVing it. It's like they feel a warm blanket. You know, they come up with those anxiety blankets or those heavy blankets that people like and they put on and it helps them. Now imagine that anywhere and everywhere in life, not just on your body, but on your mind. It just soothes you. Soothing, takes away your pain. So that's why people continue using drugs despite of negative consequences, because it takes their pain away. Now, we all know this, and you know this, that the solution later on adds to the problem. The solution becomes a new, bigger problem because now they're dealing with a physical and psychological addiction to their solution. And by the way, they never address the roots of their psychological and emotional pain. They're just dealing with the end result of it. Band-Aids, the Band-Aid society. God, we love quick fix Band-Aids, don't we? How can I fix the symptoms? I don't care about why I have them, but let me just fix the symptom. Oh, it's so backwards. So you go down and get to the roots. And you've heard me say this before. And yes, we have another therapist. So Jim always comes up here and he says some stuff. We just have Sarah, which you've seen a couple videos of her on this page. She is a licensed professional clinical counselor that's also trained in EMDR, which is trauma work. So therapist comes in and does more. She actually works with people that want to work on their trauma at our facility, which is really cool. And she wrote, "You got to feel it to heal it." She likes the kind of things that rhyme and that kind of stuff. But yeah, Sarah, you got to feel it to heal it. And Jim wrote, "Takes more and more to feel the relief until they can't." Yeah, man, it's until they can't. And that's when people start knocking on our doors and coming to our rooms, is because when they say it takes more and more, so what he's talking about is this phenomenon of tolerance. So you need more of the drink or the drug to get the same desired effect. Which desired effect is that? The effect that you used to get when you use the drug, right? So you need more and more. And then one day it comes, and no matter how much you use, you can't get high. No matter how bad you want to, you can't stop using because of the physical dependence. And you're in this jumping off stage, they call it, in 12-step recovery rooms. And that's usually when people want to start looking at changing their behavior. So here's a quick psychoeducation. There are stages of change that are very important that people go through. Now, the first stage of change that's actually a part of the change process is called pre-contemplation. It's when the person isn't even thinking about changing anything. So when they don't want to change, it's still a part of the stage of change because they have to be at that stage to get to the next stage. So pre-contemplation, like when you're not even thinking about changing, is a part of the change process. You need that part. So pre-contemplation is when there's no problems, they're having fun, it's good, parents are cool, they don't know anything, ignorance is bliss. And then it goes to the contemplation stage. And this is when people are thinking like, hey, we got to do something about this. This is starting to become a problem. This is like, hey, should I change it? Should I? And by the way, people go from pre-contemplation to contemplation to going back and forth all the time. It's like if you ever don't know what to eat at a restaurant and you look at the menu and you keep going back and forth between like two different things and you can't pick one. People do that with big changes in life too, big decisions in life. And after that one, we go into this thing called preparation, is when you start doing your research, you start getting ready, you start wanting to go do the deal and figure it out and kind of take some action, prepare to it. And if you fail to prepare, then prepare to fail, by the way. I'll use my inner coach. And the one after that is you go into this action stage when you start taking the action and start moving forward and doing what needs to be done to make changes in your life. Oftentimes the action stage does have relapse involved with it, and that's a part of the process. And then once you get through that, you get to the maintenance stage, which is doing the things you did in the action stage, but maintaining it. And you got to maintain it for a while. For me, it was about 3 years of action that I started to feel like, hey, I'm a completely different version of myself. It was about 7 years until my emotion regulation completely changed and I became a completely different version of myself. So, these whole like 30-day, 60-day, 90-day things, I understand I'm in the treatment world, and those are the things that are often allowed to work with, those time frames, the benchmarks that we need to see something happening, and insurance companies regulate all that kind of stuff. I get all that. But to make real lasting transformation and change, I mean, just think about it. Someone's lived 25 years in life and you want them to be a different person in 90 days. It's almost like comical. It just doesn't, life doesn't work that way. And Jim wrote about 5 years for me. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. 3 years for me to get my behavior different, and about 7 years for me to get my emotions different. So we'll just meet at the happy medium of 5 years and just call it a day there. So it's true though. And me and Jim aren't the only ones talking about this. You can ask 100 people that have, maintained long-term recovery. They'll tell you the same stuff. And, family members get frustrated when after, 6 months or 9 months or a year, they're not seeing the changes they want to see. Rome didn't get built overnight, right? That's what they say. There's another analogy that I like is if you walk, for example, 5 miles into a really, really dark, desolate, like isolated forest, if you keep walking and walking and walking and walking and walking into this deep, deep forest that there's no light coming in, and it's eventually someone says, hey, I don't want to be in this forest anymore, right? I walked 5 miles in, I don't want to be in this forest anymore. And they say, I want to get back out. But I want to get back out in a mile, or I want my loved one to get back out in 2 miles. That's when I expect them to be fully out of this forest. If it took 5 miles to get in, my friends, it might take 5 miles to get back out. Are you willing to keep walking? Are you willing to be patient? Are you willing to put in what you need to put in to get out? And I do believe in that analogy. I really do. And no, it's not always equal. It's not always equal, because recovery could be can be progressive. You can get out there a little quicker because you got a little bit more support and more people that you can count on. However, so psychological, emotional pain, really quick, back to it again. I have to do this part because I always do it. So forgive me for those of you who heard me. I'll do it fast. Society wants to say people that use drugs, painkillers, are bad, but people that use other painkillers are good. So what are other painkillers? Food is a painkiller. Shopping is a painkiller. Sex is a painkiller. Codependency and toxic relationships are painkillers. Work is a painkiller. Workaholism is a painkiller. So really quick, a 2-minute version of this for the ones that have heard me. Food is a painkiller. How do we know? Well, have you ever been really, really sad or frustrated or overwhelmed or stressed out, and you say, you know what? I just want to eat a pizza to myself, or I want to get 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's ice cream and I want to eat it. Because when we eat all those high caloric, high fatty foods, it does something to us. The food goes in your stomach. The human intestinal tracts, our long intestines are about 26 feet. And when you put a big pizza or you put a bunch of food in your system, double cheeseburger, bacon, fries, all that stuff, you put in your system, the body goes through the digestion process, right? The long intestine. So when something needs to digest, it takes a lot of our energy from our body. So blood goes from your extremities, from your arms, from your feet, from your brain into your stomach to help it all digest. And when you don't have blood in your extremities, you start to get really lethargic and really tired, right? So when blood's not in your brain, it goes here, you start to get tired. That's why some people fall in this thing called a food coma. If you eat too much food, you fall in a food coma. A food coma is a state of not feeling anything, right? You don't feel anything. It's void of emotions. It's just kind of like blah, numb. And you almost might even fall out and nod out. People say you need like big naps after the worse the food is, the bigger the nap you need, and they fall out. Now, if someone goes into food coma from eating too much food and falls out, and then little Johnny over here that's using heroin for his pain-killing coping skill instead of food, he also takes a big hit and also nods out. And if someone like Parham comes and takes a picture of the person who ate all that food and the guy that ate it took the heroin, if I take a picture of both of them nodded out, who could tell a difference if you don't know which one did which? You can't. You can't do it. And But society says one of them's bad and the other one's good, which is weird because the food one, if that's your coping skill, Counselor Dane actually just wrote, I eat pizza when I'm sad and pass out. Now I try to make a kale salad and walk my dog. So that's a alternative, man. Healthy coping skill. But when he says I eat pizza when I'm sad, and this isn't something that he does, the majority of people do, and then he passes out because he doesn't want to feel the sadness. So replace pizza with heroin. I use heroin when I'm sad and I nod out. What's the difference? Nothing. And I'm not saying pizza is heroin. I'm saying the use of something that causes the same pass out effect. Musical chairs, man. Why does it matter? Because the passing out is what he's looking for because he doesn't want to feel. So it's very important to catch that thing right there. And then we do this with all different things. You know, people do it with shopping. Shopping releases dopamine. People that tend to shop all the time, they're looking for that next hit. I mean, shopaholics know right now in their Amazon cart, there's 30 things. You know, they go to the mall and they buy 30 things they don't need. And when they get it, they're excited. They feel good. But then when they're laying at night and they can't pay the bills or they can't pay the credit cards, they say the average household, American household, has $14,000 in credit card debt. When they can't pay all that stuff and it's just using one to pay the other and never catching up on the interest rates and all that kind of stuff, they can't pay the mortgage. And they're staying up at night staring at the ceiling and they can't sleep, but they had all that dopamine release, right? And they can't sleep at night. And little Johnny over here just did some methamphetamines or some cocaine and it's 4:00 in the morning and he can't sleep, but he got the dopamine high from those. And someone takes a snapshot of two people laying in their bed, staring at the ceiling at 4 a.m, unable to sleep with their eyes open. What's the difference? One's bad because it's illicit and shopping's good because it's encouraged. Working's the same way, by the way. You know, working, if you like work really, really hard, you know, 80-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks, or you get a lot of money too. You get paid, you feel good. Workaholism, the more you work, the less you think about your emotions and feelings. You just get lost in your work. But go talk to a family member of a workaholic. Go talk to the child of a workaholic, a spouse of a workaholic, someone that's working 80 hours a week. They feel like they're living with someone that has an addiction to a substance. They're literally, when they explain the feeling produced by that, but here's the thing, that person can provide for them. They can buy them a car. They can pay their bills. They can take them shopping. And it's like, well, at least I'm getting some stuff out of this. But the feeling produced of workaholism is the same. But here, society says, good job on you. You're a hard worker, hardworking man or woman. And you got some money in your bank account. You're a success. And to the person that uses drugs all the time and has the family members feeling the same way, not heard, not seen, not connected to, abandoned, neglected, that person's bad because they're using substances. We all use something that takes the pain away. Toxic relationships are the same way. Love is a drug, by the way. A lot of people are in love with being in love, like in the immediate part. Like, you know, when you get in a relationship with someone, at first you feel like all these like dopamine feelings. If you don't know what that means, is how many of you remember being able to talk on the phone with someone the entire night for the first like month or two of the relationship? Right? I did this talk earlier today with our program participants. I'm like, how many of you guys, the first month or two you meet someone, or the first week or two you meet somebody, you could text message them for 10 hours and you feel good? You know? And the only reason you could stay up that much or be that engaged, and I said, how many of you have ADHD and can do that? Well, what happened to your ADHD when you're able to text back and forth for 10 hours? Is because ADHD, in order to focus, they prescribe stimulants that create dopamine. And now you don't even have the stimulants, but you're able to do it. So that means the brain's producing the same stuff. But after the first month or two, the honeymoon stage goes away and all of a sudden the same rush isn't there. So people keep pursuing it in a new relationship. So people that go one relationship to another, to another, to another, to another, what's the difference between that person? Another person is just staying high on stimulants. I don't know. So the roots of psychological and emotional pain, my friends. I know a lot of you love your loved ones. I know some of you have had parts in creating those roots, and you got to forgive yourself for that. As long as you're not continuously still doing it, as long as you're still not causing harm to those around you, because now you know better. See, when you know better, you have to do better. At some point in your life, you didn't know. I mean, if you're a mom or dad for the first time, and you're raising a child, I don't care what they say. Hey, there's so much information now on the internet. There's no excuse for not being a good parent. You can go read all these books about parenting. You should learn how to do it. All that kind of stuff. All that is bullshit. You want to know why? People learn how to parent from their parents. We don't learn by the things we read, or we don't learn by the things that they're told to us. We learn with our eyes. We learn with what we saw. It's like I've had a parent one day that I laughed in their face and they got very offended. And this parent, I laughed to the point I wasn't laughing at them. I just laughed at what they were saying. So clarify that. This is when I was younger, a little bit less professional. But this dad got pissed off and said, "Hey, I want to get out of this session." And so we left the session and I went outside with him to help him like calm down. And he's smoking a cigarette, right? He's puffing on the cigarette. He's so angry. And he's like, "I've told him to stop smoking cigarettes. I told him 1,000 times to stop smoking cigarettes. That's not accepted in this house. This is my house. I pay the bills. That's one of the rules," while he's smoking a cigarette, right? Kids don't care about what they're told. They only learn what they see. You know, I've had parents that are like angry human beings, like pissed off human beings, angry, like they rage. And their kids getting mad or raging as if they learned that from some random place. All they're doing is reenacting what it was that they saw. And they're upset. Now the mom and dad, now they're upset with the fact that their kid gets angry. It's like, hey, well, who do you think imprinted that anger onto them? It's not just some random behavior that people pick up. So I'll tell you this, moms, dads, grandparents, family members, loved ones watching this. If at some point in your life before the addiction, you did things, you said things, you acted in ways that you didn't know any better because you were just replaying what you learned in life. You were stressed out. You were acting out. That's okay, man. Forgive yourself for that. Forgive yourself for that. As long as now that you watch talks like this and you go to your own counseling, you go to your own therapy, you go to your own support groups, now that you know the impact that our behavior, the behavior we model has on the lives of others, yes, even on your adult children, even on your adult family members, not just on kids, man. Human beings, we always get impacted by others. Now that you know better, it's your responsibility to do better. Because why not? And I say the same stuff to the program participants and loved ones because hurt people. I say this every week. Hurt people. If your loved ones were hurt as a result of some of the things that you knowingly or unknowingly did in your life, which are called mistakes sometimes, you just didn't know better. If they got hurt from them, guess what they're going to do when they have their own life and their own world, when they have their own family unit and their own children, spouses, they're going to repeat the exact same thing. These are called multi-generational patterns and cycles that unless they are addressed, unless the roots of the psychological emotional pain are addressed, it's not that they maybe repeat themselves. They will repeat themselves. Because as long as you're just dealing with symptomology in life, and as long as you're just dealing with food to mask it and spending to mask it and sex to mask it and work to mask it, you're never going to get to the roots. The roots will always stay. And just like any tree, what happens to the roots, man? They get deeper and thicker and deeper and thicker. That's why there's some families that say, yeah, my grandparent and his grandparent and my dad and we're all the same. Oh, you're not. You just never address the roots. Everybody's different. Anybody can break a cycle at any moment if they're willing to take a deep dive into the roots. So this was a heavy talk. And I urge you guys and girls watching this, that if you know someone that's really struggling with understanding addictions, send this to them. Because this talk will allow that person to realize that it's not about the drink or the drug. It's not about some inanimate object that's their enemy, right? The drink or the drug is not their loved one's problem. It's the psychological and emotional pain that their kid is experiencing as a result of life, as a result of trauma, as a result of people not knowing, as a result of ignorance of all of us, that they're just using a drink or a drug as a painkiller to cope with their emotional and psychological pain. And these substances, when put into someone that's using them for those reasons, and if they're addicting, man, they're addicting. Like we know marijuana is physically addicting a little bit, but we know it's psychologically addicting because the person that's using it is using it for anxiety relief. is using it for pain relief, is using it to quiet their thoughts. So if they're using it for that, that means that they are in a lot of pain, that they're feeling really anxious, that they're really struggling in life. That's where the work is. It's not about the weed. You can discontinue the use of drugs and alcohol all you want. But if you don't address the pain, they're going to use it again. And if they don't use this drug, they'll use another drug. They'll just bounce between drugs of choices. They'll just bounce between addictive behaviors. The roots is where it all is. Now, you can get through the roots of addiction through individual therapy. You can get through it through support groups of other people that have gone there, that know the way, that show the way, they go the way. You can get it through treatment programs. But it's not just on the treatment program, my friends, or the 12-step group or the therapist to address the roots. If the person doesn't want to address the roots, if they're not ready to address the roots, I don't care. The therapist could be the Michael Jordan of therapy. If the person doesn't want to address the roots, they're not gonna. You can't force someone to do it. It takes time. It takes trust. Most people that have addictions, by the way, here's a news flash, they got significant trust issues. Significant trust issues because those who they were supposed to trust have violated their trust at some point in their life. Now, when they come into therapy and they meet a person like Param, remember, they got trust issues. And I'm saying you got to get to the roots of addiction, your roots of your pain. The odds of them jumping into the roots of their pain in the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months of it, slim to none. They'll talk about some surface stuff, the stuff in the dirt. People love talking about the stuff in the dirt. But the root stuff, it takes a while. That's why outside support, continued long-term therapy, all that stuff's required because treatment can only get to the part, hey, let's just get the person safe. Let's get them off this addictive drug. Let's get them off this lifestyle. Let's help them change the way that they're living. But outside of that, man, it's all on the individual. And family members, by the way, if you don't use drugs and alcohol and you're using things like codependency or work or power or prestige to get your pain met, you want to also address your roots of your psychological and emotional pain too, because those will continue forever. So heavy talk. Thank you so much for this one. I love, this is my favorite. This is my passion of why I'm in the field, is because I like to help people get to the roots of their stuff to understand better. And I did this morning with the program participants, man. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in that room. People were so engaged because people identify with this a lot. It makes a lot of sense to them. So I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time this and every Saturday morning. You can count on me to be back here again next week, same time, same place, doing the same thing. And if there's any topics you want, Dane's given me a topic so many times. And next week I'll talk about it. And it's about the cycle of abuse. And it's about the multi-generational pattern of abuse in individuals and families. So Dane, if you're watching this still, I want you to know that next week I will talk about the cycle of abuse. And if you want to pop up here and talk about anything too, maybe we can make that happen. So everyone else, love and appreciate you. I will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.